In these problems, we're doing some more practice with factoring trinomials. In this case, there are some other things that need to be factored out before you factor the trinomial. We have here 5x cubed minus 5x squared minus 30x, and we don't really know how to factor something that has an x cubed in it. But what I notice is that each one of these terms has, well, a 5 and an x that could be divided out of it. So I'm going to factor that out first. So put 5x out here. That would just leave x squared here on the first term. This would be minus x, the 5 goes away there, and this would be minus 6. Aha! Now this chunk right here looks a lot easier to deal with. I think I can factor that like a normal trinomial. Let's see how that would go. X squared would make this x and x. And then this is a negative number, so one of these is positive and one of these is negative. And let's see, we have to add up to a negative 1. So the factors I'm dealing with are 1 and 6. So that could be like this, or 1 and negative 6. Or it could be 2 and negative 3, or negative 2 and 3. And it looks like 2 and negative 3 are going to multiply out to be negative 6 and add up to be negative 1. So we'll put the 2 here and the 3 here. And then this factor comes along for the ride in the answer. And that is our factored trinomial. All right, let's look at the next one. So in these problems, remember, we're looking for something we can factor out first to make it simpler, make it look like a normal trinomial that we can deal with. Looks like in this one, we've got some extra letters hanging out and maybe a factor of 4 that could be pulled out. It looks like in each one we have a QR. So let's try factoring out a 4QR. In the first term, that would just leave s squared, and that looks good. That's what I want if I'm going to have a regular trinomial to factor. This term would be minus 4s, and this term would just be minus 5. Okay, that's a lot easier to deal with, so let's factor this trinomial here. I'll make my parentheses, and our first term is going to be s. That multiplies out to s squared. And our last term, we got 5. The only factors here are 1 and 5. Well, it's a negative 5, so it could be negative 1 and 5, or 1 and negative 5. And we want to add up to negative 4. So it looks like it has to be plus 1 and minus 5. And then we've got our 4QR as well. All right, one more of these. And this one is pretty tricky. It looks like every term here is divisible by 5. And actually, since the first term is negative, I'm going to divide out a negative 5, so this one becomes positive. That'll make our factoring of the trinomial a little bit easier. 125, well, negative 125 divided by a negative 5 is 25x squared. And then this divided by negative 5 would be minus 5x. And then this divided by negative 5 would be negative 6. Now this may be something you haven't seen before. We have a trinomial to factor where there's a coefficient on the x squared term other than 1. What do we do here? Well, just like we looked at the factors of the last term, we could look at the factors of the first term. In this case, it's either 1 and 25 or 5 and 5, so there's not too many to look at. And since I want to add up with a difference of 5 here, I think I'm going to stick with 5 and 5. So when I split this apart, basically I'm taking the square root of this for the first part of each of my parentheses. I'm going to start with 5x and 5x. And, you know, with factoring, sometimes it's a process of trial and error. So if you try this and it doesn't work, try the other set of factors next and see if that works. Now, let's look at these factors here. I've got a negative 6, so it could either be 1 and negative 6, or negative 1 and 6. Or it could be negative 2 and 3, or 2 and negative 3. And I want these to multiply out to be negative 6, and, well, they're not going to add up to be negative 5x. Multiplied by these guys, they're going to add up to be negative 5x. And I'm going to pick one that I have a hunch about. The difference here is negative 1. Since I'm multiplying by 5x, I think that difference then is going to end up being negative 5. So let's try putting this one in and see what happens. Now, I'm going to test this, because this is a tricky one, by foiling it out. So first, 5x times 5x, that's 25x squared. Outside, 5x times 3 is plus 15x. oops, that's supposed to be a minus 3, darn it, is minus 15x. Inside terms, 2 times 5x is plus 10x. And last, 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. So I've got 25x squared. And then negative 15 plus 10x, that's a minus 5x. Aha, that's what I wanted there. And then a negative 6. So all of that works. This is a minus. And then this 5, negative 5, has to come down. So that is the correct factorization of that trinomial. And that's a little bit of work where you have to factor out something before you can factor the trinomial.